Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 a.m. and...
Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you had a fabulous weekend. I know I did, filled with football. I read a ton. Found this new book series that I really like called The Gray Man by Mark Gentry. Read the first book in like 5 days. I got, started the second book on Saturday. I'm already halfway through it, just tearing through these books. So good. I got to get all my reading in before football starts, and college football starts this Saturday. Right? We got games earlier than that, but the real games are actually on Saturday. I think everyone knows that. So cannot wait. Football season is almost here. It's starting to get cooler outside. Like I was reading outside because the weather was so nice. Just like I said, I had a fabulous weekend for the most part. For the most part, I did sit down. I did watch that Colts preseason game, and because I watched the Colts preseason game, the thing in its entirety. I know, right? I hear watching the second and third string guys. Just look at me out here doing my job. Anyway, Jim Irsay, though, went on the broadcast, and he had to say something just completely and totally ridiculous. Okay, he went on the live broadcast and was asked about, Ballard and Steichen, and he gave his thoughts. Ridiculous. Ooh, he gave his thoughts on Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and all those guys, and I still can't believe the words that came out of his mouth when it comes to Chris Ballard specifically. Here's what Colts Colts owner Jim Irsay had to say about his general manager Chris Ballard and his head coach Shane Steichen.
Everyone knows, Chris Ballard that he's a blue chip, general manager, but Shane, Rick, let me tell you, I think an outstanding young head coach in this league. It's remarkable, and I don't know why. I'm not trying to put too much pressure on him, but Don Shula's name kind of rings a bell with him a little bit, and he's so intense, and attention to detail as well, and we're really lucky to have him. I can't tell you, how excellent I believe that he's going to be in this league. I really mean that. Of course, you'd expect me to say that about a new head coach, but I'm saying, look, I really think that we really hit the jackpot with him. He's just an outstanding football mind who demands excellence. But the players just love and respect him. So it's going to be interesting as time unravels to see what he can do. Obviously, with the new quarterback as well, it's going to be exciting.
That was Colts owner Jim Irsay with a lot of thoughts, a lot of words there on Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. Don't mind the thoughts on Shane Steichen at all. Because let's be honest, we honestly don't know yet. We've seen him for one season. We know his track record in Los Angeles with the Chargers. We know his track record in Philadelphia. Those were both extremely positive stops for him. I thought last year he did pretty well considering Jonathan Taylor barely played. Anthony Richardson only played 12 quarters. And Gardner Minshew was his starting quarterback for most of the year. And if he makes, a single good pass, a little short swing route, the Colts win the division last year. So comparing him to Don Shula, that might be a bit much, but for the most part, I can get behind what Jim Irsay had to say about Shane Steichen. And look, let's be honest. If you listen to the show for 15 seconds, then you know how highly I think of Shane Steichen. But he called Chris Ballard a, quote, blue chip general manager, which is absurd. It's a bunch of hooey. Okay, but let's be honest. It's not surprising. It's not surprising at all. Okay, I told you last week, Friday to be exact, that Chris Ballard, his job wasn't in any sort of jeopardy. Okay, his tenure in Indianapolis is now directly tied to Anthony Richardson. Okay, if Anthony Richardson's good, then Chris Ballard's going to be here a long time. If Anthony Richardson isn't good, then we'll tell him bye-bye in like 3 years. Okay? And here's the other thing, though. Like, what did you think was going to happen? As soon as he sat down, you just knew that Jim Irsay was going to just release nothing but nonsense about, about whatever they asked him about. Because, like, let's just be smart about this. Jim Irsay isn't about to go on live television during the season and say that he made a mistake in who he hired. He wasn't going to go on the air and be like, you know who's really average? Chris Ballard. You know who's, below average? Chris Ballard. He wasn't going to say that. Okay? Like, he wants to sell tickets. He wants people to buy season tickets and all those things. And the way to do that is to go on the air and hype everything up. He's the owner. That's what he should be doing. Okay? Just like my boss. Okay, he wouldn't go on radio or television or any sort of broadcasting thing where multiple people are paying attention and be like, you know who's average? You know who's below average? Jonathan Smith. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. Okay, and your boss wouldn't do that. It wouldn't say that stuff about you either, because when you run a company, you're not going to admit mistakes. You're not going to say that you messed up in hiring someone. That's not going to happen. Okay, my boss would never go on the radio or television or wherever and be like, I made a mistake in hiring Jonathan Smith. He would never do that, even if he felt that way. Okay, and as soon as Jim Irsay said all of this, I immediately started going back and looking at Chris Ballard's resume. Okay, like I knew he worked in Kansas City. Before he worked in Kansas City, he worked in Chicago for a long time with the Bears. So I'm going back and I'm reading through stuff. And Chris Ballard worked in Kansas City from 2013 to 2017. Okay, during his time in Kansas City, the Chiefs made the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years that he was there, and they won 11 or more games in 3 of those years. Pretty good. The 1 year they didn't make the playoffs, they went 9-7. John Dorsey was the general manager at that time. So John Dorsey hired Chris Ballard. John Dorsey, probably taught Chris Ballard a lot of different things. Okay, and while Ballard was in the building, while he was in Kansas City, he drafted really well. Okay, Ballard and Dorsey drafted Travis Kelce, Eric Fisher, Mitch Morse, Marcus Peters, Chris Jones, Tyreek Hill, guys that have contributed in a pretty big way on Super Bowl winning rosters. Okay, like that's a good resume of players that Chris Ballard has been a part of drafting. But let's be honest, Chris Ballard doesn't get credit for that because he wasn't the general manager. John Dorsey was. So I did a little more research looking into John Dorsey. And when John Dorsey was a general manager, he's not anymore, he was seen as one of the better general managers in the NFL. In 2017, Fox Sports released an article titled, "Is Chiefs General Manager John Dorsey the best?" As in the best general manager in football. In 2019, John Dorsey was ranked one of the 5 best general managers in the NFL, according to NFL.com. He was viewed as a great general manager. He was a guy who had a lot of success. He had drafted well, playoff teams, all that fun stuff. Ballard working underneath him was, I believe, seen as a big deal because who you work for matters. Okay, someone ever got a hold of my resume. Don't know why they would. But if they did, they'd be like, oh, this kid he produced Dan Dockage's show. That's impressive. Okay, who you work for matters. Who you work underneath matters. We see NFL head coaches get head coaching jobs because of who they work under. Okay, there are so many guys that have worked under Kyle Shanahan that are now head coaches. Mike McDaniel in Miami, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, Sean McVay in Los Angeles. Okay, guys, like who you work for in the NFL really matters. And I'd be willing to bet that part of why Chris Ballard got the job in Indianapolis is because he worked under John Dorsey. And John Dorsey was a great general manager. But this is something that people fail to understand, especially in the NFL. Proximity to greatness does not make you great, but proximity to wisdom makes you wise. Just look at the Bill Belichick coaching tree. Bill O'Brien might be the best one. He might be the best, Bill Belichick disciple to get a head coaching job. And he barely went 500. There's a long list of Bill Belichick disciples, former Bill Belichick assistants that weren't very good head coaches. Jim Schwartz, Joe Judge, Eric Mangini, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia. The list goes on. Josh McDaniels, he was talked up in a huge way. Indianapolis people know it because we thought he was going to be the new head coach here for a long time. Right before he left New England, he was kind of viewed as this blue chip coaching prospect. And then he finally leaves New England. Finally, he leaves New England. And he goes to the Raiders, and he was a terrible head coach. Okay, didn't make it out of year 2. He was terrible. And my whole point is that just because Chris Ballard worked under a great general manager in John Dorsey doesn't mean that he himself was going to be great. Like, that's just not what it means. We've seen the same thing with Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, even though I do think that offensive coaches, it's a little different because you're teaching concepts, and so those guys tend to have a little bit more success, but that's a topic for another day. It's been 8 years. We're going into year 8 of Chris Ballard here in Indianapolis. And Jim Irsay, for whatever reason, still thinks that this guy is a blue chip general manager despite the major lack of success that he has had while he's been here. Okay, Jim Irsay, for whatever reason, still thinks that Chris Ballard is going to be great. Look, I think that's ridiculous. 8 years is more than enough time to sit back and evaluate and figure out who someone's going to be. We move off of young quarterbacks in like 2 years if they don't show something. And Jim Irsay is still like, nah, this guy's got it, even though it's been 8 years of repeatedly underwhelming seasons. It all starts at the top. Good NFL teams have good owners. That is where it starts. You have to have a good owner. And I don't think the Colts have a good owner. I don't. Jim Irsay has some issues, to say the least. I don't think that's a secret. And look, it's tough to run a franchise when you're dealing with other things that aren't football related. Okay, I know a lot of Colts fans don't like Chris Ballard, and I understand it. I'm with you. But at what point does this become Irsay's fault for not firing Ballard? It's been like we're going into year 8 here. He's had plenty of opportunities to fire him, and he hasn't. And the Chris Ballard debacles continue forward. While the Colts seem hopeful about their season, while the Colts continue to talk about how much they love their guys, while the Colts continue to talk about how great Anthony Richardson has looked and how he's going to lead them to the promised land, while all that is going on, Chris Ballard is just sitting on his hands because that's what Chris Ballard does. The Vikings season, on the other hand, is toast. Okay, when you compare the Minnesota Vikings and the Indianapolis Colts, Colts fans have a lot more hope. Okay, there's hope in, hey, maybe Anthony Richardson's awesome. Maybe Adonai Mitchell is awesome. Okay, like there's a little bit of hope in this Colts camp that they can have a successful season and maybe win the playoffs. And then the Vikings are like, this year sucks, man. J.J. McCarthy out for the year. Starting corners are banged up. Receivers are banged up. Everybody's hurt. We got to play Sam Darnold. Right? There's this overwhelming sense of like defeat in Minnesota, if I had to guess. And while all that is happening, the Vikings are still trying to win. You know, that's where Grigson works now. The Vikings went out and signed cornerback Stephon Gilmore, who can still play. He's a little bit older, right? Like early 30s. I think he's 34, 35, kind of somewhere in there, if I remember correctly. While the Vikings season looks pretty meek, I don't think they're going to win very many games. We'll see. But while their season looks like, you know, it's going to be rough sledding, not a wasted year, but I know they were hoping to get JJ McCarthy out there, and I'm sure Brian Flores was excited to run his defense out there. They made a bunch of additions in the offseason, and I thought the Vikings were going to be a pretty tough out. All these injuries happen. And the Vikings, though, staying in the fight. They go out and they sign Stephon Gilmore. Meanwhile, the Colts, who talk about wanting to make the playoffs, there's talk about how great Chris Ballard is. Chris Ballard couldn't have gone out and grabbed Stephon Gilmore, a guy who had a lot of success here in Indianapolis not that long ago. But yeah, I'm supposed to believe that Chris Ballard, a guy who refuses to acknowledge the needs of this Colts roster, I'm supposed to believe that guy is a blue chip general manager. Here's my question. If Chris Ballard is a blue chip general manager, then what is Brett Veach? Brett Veach is the general manager for the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, what is that guy? That dude's won 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. He drafted Patrick Mahomes. Okay, he's had hit after hit after hit in the draft. He's winning Super Bowls. I mean, the dude's just doing these incredible things as a general manager. I haven't heard anyone call him a blue chip GM. If anyone is a blue chip general manager, it's Brett Veach in Kansas City, not Chris Ballard. I will say the Colts backups looked pretty good on Saturday. And, that is a slight tip of the cap to Chris Ballard, who drafted all these guys. We know that we didn't sign him in free agency, but, backups look good. I've got thoughts on, Colts preseason game 2. Steichen at the podium said not very many interesting things, but there's one interesting thing that he said. I'll get into that, all that coming your way here in 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I know I did. Read a bunch, watched a bunch of football, just had the best time. Watched a little WNBA as well. Caitlin Clark, thoughts on her and the Fever's return to action. They look pretty good, man. Put it on the Mercury, and then turned around yesterday and put it on the Seattle Storm. Little altercation at the end of the game. Going to get into all that, but first we have to talk Colts preseason game 2. I've got some takeaways. Let's start with the most surprising one. Nick Cross was really good. Nick Cross is clearly better than all of the Arizona Cardinals backups. So much better. Okay, he didn't play free safety on Saturday. He played strong safety instead. So a little different, playing closer to the line of scrimmage, trying to stop the run a little bit more. Still obviously you have responsibilities in the passing game, but I thought he played really well at strong safety. And, I started thinking, it's like, they've put Blackman at free safety throughout training camp. Like, if Blackman has had a lot of success during training camp playing free safety, he's clearly had a ton of success. I feel like after every training camp practice, that's all that anyone can talk about is Julian Blackman and how awesome he's been. So if he's had success at strong safety and free safety, and Nick Cross is a better strong safety than he is a free safety, can we flip the two? Is that an option? Can we do that? Seriously, like this defense, especially the secondary, needs a ton of help. Okay, and if Chris Ballard isn't willing to go out and bring in new guys from outside the building, then this coaching staff needs to be willing to move players around because help isn't coming. There's no help coming, okay? It's going to be Nick Cross and Julian back there more than likely, and thankfully I wasn't the only person who had this observation. After the game, Shane Steichen, who never says much of anything, was asked about, is it going to be Nick Cross and Julian Blackman at the two safety spots? Are you guys just trying to figure out who's going to play which spot? And here's what Shane Steichen had to say to that.
We're still working through those things. Those guys are battling. We got another week. We're going to Cincinnati. It's going to be a big week for all those guys back there at that position. We'll see where it goes from there. But he made some plays today, which was good to see.
Shane Steichen talking about Nick Cross potentially playing strong safety, Julian Blackman potentially playing free safety. Look, he's not going to give anything away because he's Shane Steichen and he never gives anything away. And, it's annoying, but that's what he should do. So I can't really get upset about it. But just looking at how they've distributed the reps during the preseason and everything that we know about what they've done at training camp, it certainly seems like it's going to be Nick Cross and Julian Blackman to start the season. The question is just who's going to play which position. Is Nick Cross going to play strong safety while Julian Blackman plays free safety? Or do they want to keep Julian Blackman at strong safety? Because that's what he's kind of played these past couple of years and he's had some success there. And do they want to keep Nick Cross at free safety? I got to be honest. I don't care what they do. I don't think either guy is a Hall of Famer at either position. So move them around. Whatever you have to do to ensure that this defense can get some stops, right? Because, the NFL, football just in general now, college, NFL, high school, whatever, highly offensive, right? Like that's very much what people care about because let's be honest, scoring points is way cooler than making the offense punt, okay? Just way cooler. And, we very much gravitate towards these high-powered offenses, and we want to talk about them and the Chiefs and Mahomes and how he threw a behind-the-back pass and all those things. But you still have to play great defense, not good defense, great defense in order to win Super Bowls. The Chiefs last year, Mahomes was awesome, but they won that Super Bowl because of their defense and how dominant it was throughout not only the regular season, but also throughout the playoffs. Okay, you have to get stops if you want to make the playoffs. You have to get stops if you want to win playoff games. That has to happen. And just with the way that this secondary looks, doesn't feel like the Colts are going to get too many stops, even though I thought Juju Brents, outside of the pass interference on, the first play of the game, I thought outside of that, he held his own and he was fine. But fine won't cut it. And if you're going to be fine at corner, you better be great at safety. And so if they need to flip Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon to be better, then that's something that needs to be done immediately. Starters, according to what Chris Ballard said last week, it seems like the starters are going to get quite a bit of run in this third and final preseason game. I would love it if they experimented with this. I'm sure that they already have in practice, but things look different during games. Okay, so preseason, week 3 against Cincinnati, against Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We're gonna get a good look at what this Colts secondary is going to look like against one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Okay, switch Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon. This is the time to experiment. Let's see how much better the secondary looks if you flip those guys' position. Moving past the secondary now, I think that's the first time in like the past 3 months that I've talked about this Colts secondary without bringing up Justin Simmons. Just did. Never mind. Every quarterback that played yesterday or on Saturday, I keep saying yesterday because in my mind, NFL football happens on Sunday, not Saturday. So apologies there. Every quarterback that played on Saturday looked capable. Okay, I thought Sam Ehlinger was really good. A couple drops in there, but I thought he threw a couple really good balls, ran when he needed to, extended plays, broke tackles, was just really athletic, right? Which is, part of why he's on the roster and part of why he's been on the roster these past couple years. I thought Keaton Salvis, I thought he was good. Thought he stood in the pocket. Seems like much more of a pocket passer than Ehlinger and Bean. But look, he was like 8 for 11. I thought he threw the ball really well. When it comes to Bean, he obviously had the rushing touchdown. He's hyper athletic, throws the ball well. I was pleasantly surprised at the quarterback play from the Colts. I think part of that is, just the offense. I think Shane Steichen does a really good job of designing things. He didn't call all the plays on Saturday. He let different assistants call different plays and stuff, which is cool. But I thought every quarterback that played looked capable. I also find it kind of funny that every quarterback on this roster is athletic except for Joe Flacco. It's like Bean can run, Ehlinger can run, Salvis can run. Joe Flacco, I don't know if he can, like physically. Like that dude's, he's 38, 39, however old he is, So I find that funny, but it's nice to know that if the worst among the worst things happen, where Richardson and Flacco go down, the Colts do have options behind Flacco that, do you feel great about it? No, but you also know that they aren't going to, throw 5 interceptions in a game. Okay, you're not running Zach Wilson out there. Okay, Bean, Salvis, Ehlinger all seem relatively capable of, at least managing the offense. So that was encouraging. I haven't talked too much about the running back battle because, I think it's overwhelmingly clear that, Jonathan Taylor is going to be the starter. We've known that for forever. Okay. And, that's a pretty evident thing, right? But the backup running back, right? Because, running back's obviously a position where you split reps. One guy isn't going to take all of them. Is it going to be Evan Hull? Is it going to be Tyler Goodson? As of today, I would lean Tyler Goodson. I know he didn't finish last year super well. Those that remember, he was the running back in when Gardner Minshew didn't make the very simple swing pass to him, and it bounced off of Goodson's fingertips, and there went the Colts' playoff chances, right? So, despite not finishing last year super great, he's been good so far. In the preseason, he was good on Saturday. 6 carries, 35 yards, and a touchdown. That's awesome. Okay, against the Broncos, he had a touchdown. So far, I would say he's running back number 2 over Evan Hull, who's done some good receiving stuff out of the backfield, but hasn't really ran the ball super well outside of his, 14-yard carry on Saturday. And, if you want to talk about the receiving thing, that's fine or whatever, but they obviously trust, Tyler Goodson to catch the ball if, based off of how they handled last season. I don't think that they'd have put him back there if he couldn't catch. Last thing on the Colts preseason game Saturday, Matt Gay missed 2 field goals. Okay. Not overly worried about it. This happens sometimes. Kicking's really hard. Okay, like that's my favorite thing about college game day. It's probably my favorite bit that they do where they pull some random kid out of the crowd and they're like, kick this 30-yard field goal. And they just and they never make it. And they never make it because kicking is really hard and it's something that we sit back and we watch and we all think that we can do because let's be honest, it looks incredibly easy. You just have to kick a ball. Like that's simple. And then we sit back and we see Matt Gay in a preseason game miss not 1 but 2 field goals and then we all freak out. I'm not worried about it. He was incredible last year. You can make an argument. He was the second best kicker in the NFL last year behind Justin Tucker, who is probably the best kicker ever. Okay. And look, I'm not going to be worried about it until he starts missing some in the actual regular season. Okay. Because that's when things actually matter. Okay. Like, we sit back and we watch these preseason games and we overreact and, we make these big projections based off of, something that doesn't matter. Games where the starters aren't always playing, right? And games where there's a lot of backups, okay? Games where there's a lot of rookies and dudes that just don't have a ton of experience. We make all these projections, and it's like, I don't know, maybe we just wait for the regular season to figure out who's good and who isn't. And that's kind of how I feel about Matt Gay. He was awesome last year, okay? Him missing 2 field goals in a preseason game, I don't think there's enough there for us to all of a sudden bail on who Matt Gay is as a kicker. Because once again, he was awesome last year, and I expect for him to be awesome once again this year. Speaking of being awesome, the Indiana Fever, man, they look pretty darn good. 12 games left in the season after their win over the Mercury and their win over the Seattle Storm yesterday. 12 games left. Okay, playoff race is, we're in the midst of that. It seems like the Fever are going to make the playoffs. The question is the seeding, all those things. But before we talk about that, we talk about how amazing Caitlin Clark is. There's a little mix-up between the Storm and the Fever after yesterday's game. I'm going to talk about that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on the radio, 1430 AM. Maybe you're watching live on YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there, subscribe, join the live stream, join the chat, join the conversation. Head over YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You can also download the Indy Sports Ticket app, and you can listen that way. You can watch the live stream on Twitter as well. Follow me there at __ Jonathan Smith. Now, the Indiana Fever back in action, and I love it. Okay, the WNBA, it's so petty. There's so much drama, plenty of stuff to talk about it. And the Indiana Fever are 2-0 since coming back from the Olympic break. Okay, they beat the Phoenix Mercury by 11 on Friday. Then they beat the Seattle Storm by 17 yesterday. And so far in these two games, what a surprise. Caitlin Clark looks amazing, right? It really kind of seemed like she had figured some things out, kind of that last, 2 to 3 weeks before the Olympic break happened. And man, she's come back well rested, rejuvenated, all those things. She's come back and man, she has just continued to play great. And I want to talk about how great she's been, but I have to talk about what happened at the end of the Fever and Storm game first. With about 15 to 20 seconds left in the game, Fever clearly put the game away. They're going to win, no question about it. Caitlin Clark walks over to the Seattle Storm bench, not to taunt the Seattle Storm, which, wouldn't have been surprising given how much trash Caitlin Clark likes to talk. She didn't have any ill intentions in mind. She's very simply waving her arms up, trying to get the crowd going. But she's looking at the crowd behind the Storm bench. And as she's walking over, I believe it was Jewel Lloyd, she runs over and bumps into Caitlin. Caitlin just kind of ignores her, kind of walks around her, gets kind of close to the Seattle bench. And let's just say that the Seattle Storm were not very happy about that. The Storm's coach then crosses the half-court line, which you aren't allowed to do, and has some words for Christy Sides. They're up against each other, and the Seattle Storm coach, I don't know her name, she's just clearly upset. Okay, maybe it was because Christy Sides didn't pull her starters. Maybe it was because of what Caitlin Clark said. I don't know. Either way, I have an issue with it. I really do. First and foremost, if you don't want to deal with trash talk, if you don't want to deal with, the home team trying to get their home crowd going, anything like that, then win. That's the simple fix to everything. Just win. I will never forget being a child. Okay, I have an older brother. We had a very normal older brother, younger brother relationship. We're 14 months apart to the day. And man, we competed in everything. Basketball, football, video games, whatever it was. There were many days and nights where we would play against each other in, sports, video games, whatever. And when I was younger, my older brother would beat me. He would. And he used to just drive me insane. And, my older brother, man, loves to talk trash and run his mouth and do all those things. And I used to get so incredibly upset. I'm trying to punch him and my dad's having to, just pick me up, pull me away. I'm steaming mad. I had some anger issues as a child. I'm a lot better now though. And my dad would look at me and he'd be like, Jonathan, what's wrong? I'd be like, he beat me and, he's talking trash or whatever. And my dad would just very simply be like, well, Jonathan, if you don't want him to talk trash, then beat him. And I'll never forget from that moment on, man, I started working so hard at everything that my brother and I competed in. Okay, I would play extra video games on the weekend and write down plays and do all sorts of stuff just to ensure that I would win. That way I didn't have to listen to my older brother run his mouth. I played basketball extra. That way whenever we played one-on-one, I could win and I wouldn't have to listen to him run his mouth. And instead, I could run mine. So Seattle Storm, if you don't want to deal with trash talk or worrying about the opposing team pulling their starters and all that, then just win the game. That's very simply the answer. Also, the Storm had beaten the Fever by 15 and 12 earlier in the season. Do you know what they didn't do in those games? They did not take a shot clock violation on their final possession to avoid running up the score like the Indiana Fever did yesterday. Okay, the Indiana Fever, sure, they had their starters on the floor, but they dribbled the ball out. They took a turnover to avoid running up the score, to avoid, being ridiculous. Okay? That's what they did. And you know who didn't do that? The Seattle Storm, when they beat them by 12 and 15 earlier in the season. Okay? Who cares if the starters were on the floor? They clearly were not trying to run up the score. The Seattle Storm were just upset that they lost. They were upset that they got their butts kicked. Okay? And they're upset that they know that more butt kicks are on the way. Okay? There's a relatively decent chance that the Seattle Storm and the Indiana Fever meet in the playoffs, and I hope it happens. I really, really do. Because I don't think that the Storm play the Fever again this year. If they do play each other, it'll be in the playoffs. And look, all I'm saying is that's going to be straight cinema after what just happened in this game. I hope it happens because I think it would be incredibly entertaining. Speaking of entertaining, Caitlin Clark, man, she's just amazing. She is. I said last week that I thought she was going to be much better post the Olympic break, right? She's had some time off, watch film, hang out with her teammates a little bit more, practice with her teammates a little bit more, all those things. And so far, through 2 games, she's been really good. Hey, against the Mercury, first game back, 29 points on 50% shooting from the floor, 36% from 3, 10 assists, 5 rebounds. I mean, just lit the Mercury up. There's a clip making its way around Twitter, where Diana Taurasi says something to Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark is like, I don't give up, just like no regard whatsoever. She doesn't care. She's out for blood, and that continued yesterday. Yesterday, she goes out, 23 points, 9 assists, 3 rebounds on 47% shooting from the field and 30% from 3. 5 turnovers in both games for the haters out there who want me to mention that. She's come back, and in these first 2 games, man, she's been everything that we want her to be. She's been spectacular, passing the ball at an incredibly high level, shooting the ball really well, finishing at the rim, finding her teammates. Speaking of finding her teammates, she now holds the record for assists in a season by a rookie. She holds the rookie single season assist record. There are still 12 games left in the season. And, she was obviously asked about it after the game. Here's Caitlin Clark talking about the assist record and just, the fact that she's leading the WNBA in assists so far in her rookie season.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, if you would have told me I would lead the league in assists coming in here in my rookie season, I probably would have told you you're lying. But I take a lot of pride in that. I want to set my teammates up first and foremost because I think that's going to help you have the most successful team. Whether that's in the pick and roll, that's probably where I'm most successful with that. And I'm lucky enough to play with AB and Liz, and who are really good in that action. And then I think our shooting has gotten a lot better, especially to start these 2 games of the second half. So, I'm always looking for my teammates in transition. That's kind of where I thrive the most. And sometimes I overpass it a little bit. And, there's always going to be the turnover side of it, just with how fast I play the game and, how much the ball is in my hands. But, they'll continue to learn and continue to get better at that. But I still feel like there's a lot of room for me to grow. So that's what I'm most excited about.
That was Caitlin Clark talking about the fact that she leads the WNBA in assists and the fact that she now has the rookie assist record, right? With, a lot. And once again, still 12 games left in the season. She is 85 assists away from breaking the single season assist record in the WNBA, which she's going to do. As a rookie, she's going to break the record for most assists in a single WNBA season. She has to average 6 assists a game over the last 12 to break the record. That math sounds wrong, but let's go with it. It might be 7. I think it's 7 assists a game over the last 12 because 7 times 12 is 84. That would tie it. So she did, one extra in there somewhere. I think she's going to do it. I really do. Like, once again, she's leading the WNBA in assists. Aaliyah Boston, Melissa Smith, Lexi Hull shot the crap out of the ball yesterday. Okay, like her teammates are figuring out that Caitlin Clark's going to find them. And as they continue to realize this, the assist numbers are only going to go up. She is only going to get better. And that is the amazing part of all of this. Okay, like, she's probably going to break the single season assist record this year. If she doesn't, then she'll just break it next year, okay? Because once again, she's going to continue to get better, even though she's already amazing. As she continues to lead the Indiana Fever to wins, they have won 5 straight games against teams over 500. Okay, it's not like she's doing this against some of the worst teams in the WNBA. Okay, it's not like she's doing this against the Mystic or the Dallas Wings or anybody like that. No, she's doing this against the Mercury, who are a playoff team. She's doing this against the Seattle Storm, who are a playoff team. Okay, before they went to the Olympic break, they beat the Minnesota Lynx, who are currently the 3 seed. Okay, like she's doing this against some of the better teams and some of the better players in the WNBA, and it's going to continue. Right, I'm sitting back and I'm watching the game, and I see the altercation happen. And between, Christy Sides and the Storm head coach, I'm telling you right now, we're going to see this again this year. This is 1,000% going to happen. It may not be Christy Sides and the coach of the other team, but it'll probably be Caitlin Clark and some other player. Because Caitlin Clark talks a ton of trash, runs her mouth a lot, which is cool. I like it. I think we all like trash talk. I got to be honest. I like Draymond Green. Part of it is because he talks a lot of trash. Okay, I enjoy listening to it. I think it's funny. It adds just something extra to the game. And Caitlin Clark runs her mouth quite a bit, and she's coming for vengeance. Teams ran it up on the Fever to start the year. Okay, in the month of May, which is only half of a month. That was the first month of the season. The Fever went 1-9. They started the year 1-9. 5 of their first 9 losses were by double digits. Okay, teams just running it up, trying to score whenever they can. Just reminding Caitlin Clark, remember, there's a learning curve. She's turning the ball over a ton. It was rough. Like, we have come a long way from where the Indiana Fever started at the beginning of the season. Okay? 5 of their first 9 losses were by double digits. 4 of those 5 were by 15 points or more. A couple 20-point losses sprinkled in there as well. Okay? And then, June was a little bit better. The schedule lightened up. They played some of the lesser teams in the WNBA. They won a few games, but the games that they lost, teams not afraid to run up the score on them. Okay? And here's what's going to happen. Because the WNBA only has 12 teams and all that fun stuff, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever are going to play a lot of these teams again. And, man, they're going to look to crush these teams. Okay? Because to start the year, they ran it up on them. And now they're about to turn around and give it right back to them. And I cannot wait for it. Cannot wait. Because the drama is going to come just out of the floodgates. It's going to be amazing. And like I said, I can't wait to watch it. Okay, I can't wait to see all the altercations. I can't wait to hear the shade thrown at the press conferences and all the little subtle digs at each other. And I can't wait for it. Okay, I look, the most appealing part about the WNBA to me is not, the style of play. It's not the shooting or the passing or the way that they actually play the game of basketball. The most appealing thing to me is all the drama, all the crazy stuff that happens. For just like what happened yesterday between the Storm and the Fever. The coaches having a little conversation with time still left on the clock. Like the game wasn't over. It wasn't like this happened, when they were shaking hands at the end, because sometimes, we'll see coaches grab each other and they'll just kind of whisper in each other's ears. That's not when this happened. This happened with, 10 seconds left on the game clock. You see the referee walk over and separate them. What he should have done, he should have teed up the Seattle Storm coach. That's what should have happened. Okay, he gave Caitlin Clark just a horrendously bad tech during the game because she slapped the pad on the goal. Teed her up because it was, quote, disrespectful to the game of basketball, which is just an utterly insane amount of bull crap. She's just frustrated. Okay, like this happens all the time with athletes. They miss shots that they feel like they should make, and they get frustrated because of it. That's fine. It's part of, the way that athletes are, right? When you expect to be great and you aren't, that's an incredibly frustrating thing. And, good for Caitlin. She didn't let one tech become two. You saw her throw her hands up after the first one. But yeah, I mean, really impressive start back from this Indiana Fever team. I fully expect for them to continue to absolutely crush teams. They look awesome. They're clearly very, very talented. Like they are so incredibly talented. Their schedule is set to continue, I think, tomorrow night. No, they don't play tomorrow night. That's weird. They're gonna have multiple days off. Since when do the Indiana Fever get multiple days off? That never seems to happen. Their next game, isn't until the 24th. They got like a full week off. That's insanity. But they take on the Minnesota Lynx on the road at Minnesota. That game will be fun. Olympic head coach. The last time the Fever went up there, they won. Words were exchanged. It was great. Oh, man. So great. Something that's not great, Chris Ballard. Something that's worth, Jim Irsay opening his mouth and spewing nonsense. I've got audio of Jim Irsay doing just that when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great day. I know I am. Locked in, loaded. Colts football season almost here. Their next preseason game coming up Thursday night. If Chris Ballard told us the truth, then we're going to see a lot of the starters on Thursday, which is great. I want to see the starters. You want to see the starters, right? Because the starters for the Indianapolis Colts have to just be amazing since Jim Irsay said that Chris Ballard is a, quote, blue chip general manager. Jim Irsay hopped in the booth during the Colts broadcast on Saturday of their second preseason game, and he was asked about his thoughts on Colts general manager Chris Ballard and Colts head coach Shane Steichen, and he opened his mouth and he spewed nothing but nonsense. Here is that nonsense.
Everyone knows, Chris Ballard, that he's a blue chip, general manager, but Shane, Rick, let me tell you, I think an outstanding young head coach in this league. It's remarkable, and I don't know why. I'm not trying to put too much pressure on him, but Don Shula's name kind of rings a bell with him a little bit, and he's so intense, and attention to detail as well. And we're really lucky to have him. I can't tell you, how excellent I believe that he's going to be in this league. I really mean that. Of course, you'd expect me to say that about a new head coach, but I'm saying, look, I really think that we really hit the jackpot with him. He's just an outstanding football mind who demands excellence. But the players just love and respect him. So it's going to be interesting as time unravels to see what he can do. Obviously, with the new quarterback as well. It's going to be exciting.
That was Colts owner Jim Irsay spewing nonsense. Oh my gosh. Look, I don't mind his thoughts on Shane Steichen. If you've listened to my show for 15 seconds, then you know I am the biggest supporter of Shane Steichen. I think he's incredible. I think when you look at his resume, what he did in Philly with Jalen Hurts is impressive. I think what he did with Justin Herbert in his rookie season, which was the best rookie season ever by a quarterback at that time. I think that his resume speaks for itself. Comparing him to Don Shula, though, a little bit rich for me. I don't know about comparing him to one of the best NFL coaches ever when he's only in his second season. But hey, I digress. I mainly want to focus on the part where he called Chris Ballard a, quote, blue chip general manager. I don't know about that. Bunch of, sounds like a bunch of hooey to me. But look, it's not surprising. Okay, I came out last week on Friday. I was like, Chris Ballard ain't going anywhere. All right, that dude's not going anywhere. Okay, I told you last week on Friday that Chris Ballard's tenure here in Indianapolis is directly tied to Anthony Richardson. Okay, so Chris Ballard is here for at least another 3 years. Okay, if Anthony Richardson does not pan out, I think he'll be gone in 3 years. But if Anthony Richardson is good and this Colts team makes the playoffs, and if this Colts team wins the division, then guess what, folks? We get a lot more Chris Ballard coming our way. Okay, his tenure is tied directly to Anthony Richardson. And when it comes to what Jim Irsay said, I'm not surprised, and I have no issue with it whatsoever. He's the owner. He hired Chris Ballard. Do you really think he's going to go on TV during the season and say something like, yeah, Chris Ballard, everyone knows him, he's pretty average? No, he's not going to say that about someone that he hired. That's not going to happen. Okay, he's not going to go on television and say, yeah, I probably should have fired him. Like, that's not going to happen. Okay, of course he's going to speak profoundly about Chris Ballard. If my boss came on the radio where everyone could hear him and he had to talk about me or Dan, you know what he would say? Oh, those guys are amazing. Jonathan, man, bright future. Dan's, a radio legend. He's great. That's what he would say, because that's what you say when the microphone is turned on in front of your face and you're asked about one of your employees. Okay? Like, that's what you do. That's what your boss would do for you as well. Okay? That's how owners and managers, that's just how they operate. That's how you operate in front of your wife. If someone asked you a question about your wife, if someone asked me about my wife and she was standing right beside me, or I knew that she would hear what I said later, it would be nothing but positivity coming from my mouth. Same thing goes for you. When you are given a platform and you know that what you say is going to be broadcasted back to whoever it is that you're talking about, you're going to say nice things, especially if you hired them, if you chose them to do a specific job. The other part of this is, you think Chris Ballard doesn't want to sell tickets? Come on now. If people buy that, if people buy the idea that Shane Steichen, who once again I like a lot, if people buy the idea that Shane Steichen is the next Don Shula, then guess what's going to happen? The Colts are going to sell a whole bunch of tickets, baby. All right, and that's ultimately what Jim Irsay wants. And here's the thing, though. I believe that he believes that Chris Ballard is a blue chip guy. Okay? And I sat there. I was like, okay, why is he saying this? Why does he think this? Right? Because he could have just said, Chris Ballard is a really good general manager. We're very pleased with what he's done. But no, he called him a blue chip general manager. I was like, why? Why does he think this? Is there something in his history that I'm missing? So I went through it. I was like, all right, Chris Ballard got his start in front offices when he worked in Chicago. He was there for a long time. And then ultimately in 2013, he gets hired by the Kansas City Chiefs. Works there from 2013 to 2017. During his time in Kansas City, the Chiefs made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, won 11 or more games in 3 of those years. And the 1 year they didn't make the playoffs, they went 9-7. John Dorsey was the general manager at that time. Now, when Ballard was in the building working with John Dorsey, drafting players, they drafted extremely well. They did. Travis Kelce, arguably the best tight end ever. Eric Fisher was a good left tackle for a long time. Mitch Morse was a good offensive guard. Marcus Peters, right, tearing people up in Baltimore. Great starting cornerback. Chris Jones, if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, he would have been the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL for the past decade. And Tyreek Hill, who needs no introduction. He's been the best receiver in football for these past few years. That is a good resume of players that have been good in the NFL. And Ballard drafted all those guys over the course of 4 years. Okay, and he did that underneath John Dorsey. Okay, John Dorsey, when he was an NFL general manager, he's not anymore. When he was, though, he was viewed as one of the best general managers in the NFL. Okay, while he was employed in 2017, Fox released an article titled, quote, "Is Chiefs general manager John Dorsey the best?" End quote. Is John Dorsey the best general manager in the NFL? That was the question that was posed. Okay, and that's not the only article or the only year that this happened. 2019, John Dorsey was ranked as one of the 5 best general managers in the NFL, according to NFL.com. Okay, he was viewed as a great general manager. And who you work for whenever you move up and you get a new job, guess what matters? Who you worked for previously. Okay, like I wouldn't be producing Dan's show from noon to 3, and I wouldn't be hosting my own show if I had previously produced a great morning show here in the market. Okay, wouldn't be here doing this if that wasn't the case. Okay, if someone gets a hold of my resume, they're like, "Geez, like you produced the Dan Dockett show. That's pretty impressive." And I'll say, "Yeah, it is." Right? Because who you work for and what you do previously matters. I would be willing to bet that part of why Chris Ballard got the job in Indianapolis, part of why people thought he had upside, part of why Jim Irsay thought and still thinks that he was a blue chip general manager is because he worked underneath John Dorsey. But here's the thing that not just Jim Irsay, every NFL team, or maybe not every NFL team, but multiple NFL teams just don't quite understand. Proximity to greatness does not make you great. Just look at the Bill Belichick coaching tree. It's not great. Bill O'Brien might be the best one, and he barely went 500 in the NFL. Okay, there's a list of Bill Belichick disciples that didn't pan out. Honestly, I can't think of one that did pan out. Jim Schwartz struggled. Joe Judge didn't coach a season in New York before he got fired. Eric Mangini, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia. The list goes on. And when we talk about blue chip prospects, oh my gosh, Josh McDaniels coming out of New England. You guys remember the hype? I'm assuming you do because we thought he was going to be the coach here in Indianapolis for a bit. Josh McDaniels was talked up in a huge way before he left New England. He was a blue chip coaching prospect. Oh my gosh, this is the guy who he's worked underneath Belichick. He's worked with Tom Brady, as if it mattered who Tom Brady's offensive coordinator was. My gosh. Then he leaves New England, and there are high expectations for him. It's like, this dude's worked underneath greatness for years. He sat in rooms with Belichick. This dude should be awesome. And then he got to the Raiders, and he was terrible. He was terrible. Okay, couldn't coach anyone. He couldn't coach a roadrunner how to run. Okay, like he was bad. Just because you work underneath greatness and you're around people that are great at their jobs all the time does not mean that you yourself are going to be great. Being around greatness doesn't make you great. Now, being around wise people makes you wise. I think that's why we've seen a lot of success from Andy Reid disciples, except for Eric Bieniemy. I think that's why we've seen a lot of success from Kyle Shanahan disciples, because offense is about concepts, and if you learn those concepts, then you should be able to go other places and put those things into practice. Okay, but when it comes to being a general manager, I just don't think that it works that way. Sure, you can take different philosophies from guys and you can use them yourself, but just because Chris Ballard worked under a great general manager in John Dorsey doesn't mean that he himself is going to be great. It's been 8 years, and I think that we all know that Chris Ballard isn't going to be great. He's going to be average at best. And for some reason, Jim Irsay still thinks that this guy's going to be great because of who he worked under 8 years ago. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, quarterbacks come out of college and they get drafted in the first round, and we get excited about them. We're like, oh, like this guy's going to be amazing. He was so good at fill in the blank school. And then they struggle for like a year and a half, and we're like, oh, this guy's terrible. Let's move off of him. Let's draft another quarterback. Come on, like let's get this cycle going. We move off of these quarterbacks in the NFL so quickly. We move off of head coaches in the NFL so quickly, but general managers, nah. We give them like a decade of doing nothing. And then we're finally like, I guess it didn't work out. We'll see you later. That's what the Colts are about to do. And the frustrating thing is, like, this all starts at the top. Good NFL teams have good owners. And to put it simply, I don't think that the Indianapolis Colts have a good owner. Okay, Jim Irsay has some issues. I don't think that that's a secret. And I believe it's tough to run a franchise. I think it's tough to do anything if you're dealing with stuff that's not football related or not related to your job. Okay, I know a lot of Colts fans out there don't like Chris Ballard, and I get it. Trust me, I do. Okay, the dude's just sat on his hands for forever. But at what point does this become Jim Irsay's fault for not firing Ballard? Okay, he's had plenty of opportunities to do it, and he still hasn't done it. That's what's going on. Okay. And, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Ballard figures it out. I hope that Jim Irsay's right. I hope Chris Ballard winds up being amazing. I really do. I hope he ends up being this blue chip general manager that Jim Irsay thinks that he is. But the evidence that we've had over the last 8 years just doesn't really seem like that's what's going to happen. Now, I do think that this is a blue chip quarterback prospect class. Like, this could be potentially the best quarterback class we've ever seen. Okay. I'll give you my thoughts on that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. I know I am. I'm just, locked and loaded. I woke up this morning. I got to brag on myself here for a second. I weighed 177 pounds. It's a big deal for me, okay? Like, that's how much I weighed. Then I went on vacation, and I came back, and I was like 187. It was not good. So, back down, feeling really, really good. But I want to talk about this year's quarterback class because I think it could be the best ever. I'm not going to spend an outrageous amount of time on this, but I was thinking about it over the weekend, and I'm ready to jump into it. I know that it's the preseason, but I've been watching these guys pretty thoroughly during the preseason, and I think that they've looked really good. Caleb Williams, great against the Bills, showing us why he was the number 1 overall pick. Okay? Like, stepping up in the pocket, throwing the ball on time, on target. The arm talent is clearly there. The ability to do the spectacular is clearly there. Okay? Like the dude's amazing. Okay? And sure, he struggled a little bit against the Bengals, but, there's going to be games like that. And even though he struggled against the Bengals, that seemed to be the game where he showed us all the insanely amazing things that he can do with not only his arm, but also his legs. I mean, the dude is just nothing short of spectacular. Nothing short of spectacular when it's, him operating in the pocket or out on the edge. Jaden Daniels hasn't played a ton, but, his first preseason game, he was awesome. And then he comes out against the Dolphins and just goes 10 for 12. I think he was like throwing the ball all over the field, really showing that he can work in the pocket. He doesn't just have to take off and run and make plays with his legs. Okay. It's been impressive what we've seen from second overall pick, Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix looks awesome for the Broncos. Like, if you're the Broncos, I don't know how he's not your starter. Okay. I meant to text my buddy who's a big Broncos fan and ask him his thoughts, but Bo Nix so far with the Broncos looks incredible. J.J. McCarthy only got to play one preseason game before he got hurt, but he really flashed, really showed off the ability to really rip the football. So I think J.J. McCarthy's going to be fine. Michael Penix Jr. looked so good in the first preseason game that the Falcons were like, we're good. We're not going to put him out there again. Okay, I think the one question that we had coming into the draft was, primarily for Drake May, because let's be honest, New England doesn't exactly have an abundance of talent. Okay, he's in the worst situation of all of them. No elite receivers, a bad offensive line, a defensive-minded rookie head coach. He looked pretty good against the Eagles last week on Thursday. Okay, like that's 6 quarterbacks who through the preseason have at least shown that they're capable of something. I hope they're all great because a lot of these teams are playing in that 1 o'clock window. The NFL has put all the better quarterbacks in either that 4:05 time slot or in that prime time slot. So if these rookies suck, then that 1 o'clock window is going to be no fun to watch. Okay, like this 2024 class, though, top to bottom, I think it's going to give the 2020 quarterback class a run for their money in terms of being the best quarterback class ever. If you don't remember that 2020 class, they're all on second contracts, all making, $55 million a year or whatever it is. That's Tua, Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts. Okay, Tua is probably the worst of the bunch, but the Dolphins are probably going to make the playoffs again. If they host a home playoff game, then he'll be fine. So this 2024 class, I think, is going to be really good. Someone in the chat, Otter Creek, thinks that Bo Nix is already better than Anthony Richardson. And it's the preseason. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Okay. Like we've seen Anthony Richardson throw 84 passes last year. We saw him throw four passes, right, in the one preseason game that he's played. So let's maybe chill out a little bit before we're like, Bo Nix is better. We don't know that yet. You might be right, but we don't know that quite yet. Speaking of Colts in the preseason, they played their second preseason game on Saturday. I took notes, many thoughts. Let's start with I think the thing that we're all monitoring the most when it comes to the Colts in this preseason, it's the safety position. Okay, and on a week where starters weren't supposed to play, we saw a little bit of Nick Cross, which I didn't think was super surprising. I figured we'd see the starting, the guys kind of competing for that safety spot rotate in and out, and that's what we saw. Okay, Nick Cross was way better than the Cardinals' backups. No way around it. He tackled well. Okay, I felt like they were calling his name after every play that he was on the field. Just constantly had his nose around the football. And I think the important thing to know from this game is he didn't play free safety. He played strong safety. And which is interesting to me because they've played Julian Blackmon at free safety throughout camp. And if Blackmon can play free safety and Cross is better at playing strong safety, then can we just do that? Can we just flip those guys? Because look, the back end of the secondary, we all know it's not very good. Okay, it's been preached about on this show. All right, it's horrendously bad on the back end. And look, if Chris Ballard isn't willing to go out and get new guys and bring them into the building, then they need to at least be willing to move players around, to shuffle players around. Okay, like got to figure out that part of it. I thought, Juju Brents also played on Saturday. I thought he played fine. Okay, he had the pass interference on the first play of the game. Outside of that, you didn't hear his name called again, which isn't the worst thing for a corner. If they're not calling your name, that means they're not throwing your way, which usually means that you're playing halfway decent coverage. He also busted up his nose, so we'll see if he plays on Thursday. But we'll see what happens there. Shane Steichen was asked after the game about Nick Cross, realizing that, he had played a little bit. This is actually a great question. He asked Shane Steichen point blank, are Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon going to be the starting safeties? And are you guys just trying to figure out who's going to play strong and who's going to play free? Here was Colts head coach Shane Steichen's response to that question.
We're still working through those things. Those guys are battling. We got another week, we're going to Cincinnati. It's going to be a big week for all those guys back there at that position. We'll see where it goes from there, but he made some plays today, which was good to see.
It was good to see. Shane, you're exactly right. Nick Cross made some plays during the preseason game, and it was really nice. It really, really was. Now, look, he's not going to give anything away. If you go back and if you want to listen to that full 5-minute press conference, he starts his response to every question the exact same way. Oh, we'll see. We still got a week left. I don't know. We still have a week left. When they know, okay, like they're starting to figure things out. And the way that they have split reps during these preseason games, it leads me to believe that Nick Cross is going to be the other starting safety. That's just kind of where I've landed looking at how they've distributed the reps to the multiple different safeties, all kind of competing for that last spot. So it looks like it's going to be Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon. We'll see. I think I like the idea of moving Nick Cross to strong safety and Julian Blackmon to free, but we'll see what they wind up doing. Other notes from the game. I thought every quarterback that played looked pretty capable. Okay, Sam Ehlinger, I thought played well. Bean played well. Salvis played well to a point where it's like if Richardson and Joe Flacco get hurt, if they have to run one of those three guys out there, I'm not gonna, well, I'd be worried, of course, but I'm not gonna like freak out. It's not like they're gonna be running Zach Wilson out there or anything like that. So they'll be fine. All three of those guys after Flacco, they're all pretty athletic, which I think helps. I also find it funny that every quarterback on this roster is athletic except for Joe Flacco. But anyway, I thought that the quarterback play looked good. I want to talk about the backup running back spot here for a second, because obviously, Jonathan Taylor is going to carry the ball every time that the Colts run it. There's going to be a bit of, some splitting of the reps there, whether it's 70-30, 60-40, whatever it is. Like the Colts have to have a second running back on their roster that they have some confidence in. I like Tyler Goodson so far through the preseason. Tyler Goodson didn't finish great last year. He was the running back in the game where they threw the swing pass and it hit his fingers. And, as the ball fell to the ground, so did the Colts' chances of winning the division and making the playoffs. So He didn't finish last year on a great note, but he's been good so far in the preseason. Saturday, 6 carries, 35 yards, and a touchdown. Against the Broncos, he scored a touchdown. So far, I like him as running back too. I think he's read holes well. I think he's really fast, which is awesome. Evan Hull, though, that's a guy that I think people were expecting coming into camp to win the position, and he hasn't found much room to run. Like he had a 14-yard carry on Saturday against the Cardinals. That really kind of feels like it. I feel like every time he's handed the ball, he's only picking up like 2 yards, 3 yards maybe. So, I feel like Tyler Goodson's just greatly outperforming Evan Hull. And, based off of last year, they clearly trust Tyler Goodson to some extent if they're going to put him in on the biggest play of the season and trust him. So we'll kind of see what the Colts wind up doing there at that spot. It's going to be interesting, though, because like I said, Jonathan Taylor, it's a guy who's been banged up a little bit these past couple years. Like they have to find somebody who's a reliable backup option. The good news is if they get to the end of camp, they don't like Goodson to be the backup and they don't like Evan Hull to be the backup or any of these other guys, then guess what? Running backs grow on trees. They can easily hit the undrafted free agents and find a guy that can play running back. There's a million and one of them. It's incredible. The Baltimore Ravens, like their starting running backs get hurt every year, and then they just go to these free agents that, haven't played football all year, and then they bring in somebody who's simply amazing. So we'll see what they do there with that backup running back spot. I'll be interested to kind of see. Was on Twitter during the game, saw people freaking out about Matt Gay, Colts kicker, missing a couple field goals. Got to be honest, I don't care a ton. Don't really care a ton. Like, it's the preseason. He missed a couple of games. That's fine, whatever. Or he missed a couple of field goals during the game. That's fine, whatever. Like, he was arguably the second best kicker in the NFL last year behind Justin Tucker. Okay, like he had an incredible, incredible year last year. Okay, but he missed a couple in the preseason. Who gives a rip? Not me. I can tell you that much. Something I do give a rip about, though, is Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever and everything that they have going on. Okay, 2-0 post the Olympic break. Put it on the Mercury on Friday. Put it on the Seattle Storm yesterday. Talking trash. Like it's great. It's great. I really love it, to be quite honest with you. And Fever 2-0 coming back from the Olympic break. Got in a little mix up with the Seattle Storm at the end of their game yesterday. I'm getting into that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Great show today. Jim Irsay's thoughts on Chris Ballard were insane, calling him blue chip. Didn't mind the thoughts on Shane Steichen, except for the fact that he compared him to Don Shula. Not great there. Colts preseason game 2 was a win. Saw a lot of the backups. Saw Nick Cross play well, which is encouraging. Right, preseason game 3 happening on Thursday when the Colts travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. They'll be up there for training camp as well, and for joint practices. Excuse me. And so that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. Just kind of hear how things go. How does the secondary look in joint practices and in the game against a great quarterback in Joe Burrow, one of the 5 best in the NFL. So hopefully we get good reports out of that. Hopefully Nick Cross can continue to play well like he did against, the Cardinals on Saturday. And hopefully the Indiana Fever can continue to play well. They kind of figured things out a bit before, like 3 weeks before the Olympic break. And, they haven't really looked back since. They've played really well. The Fever are 2-0 since returning from the Olympic break. They beat the Phoenix Mercury by 11 on Friday. Then they beat the Seattle Storm by 17 yesterday. Caitlin Clark looks incredible so far in these 2 games. Okay, I've got more on her here in a second, but she's been awesome. Breaks the rookie assist record and still leading the league in assists, and she's shooting the ball and she's finding open teammates, and she's just picking up right where she left off. And like I said, more on her here in a moment. I want to talk about what happened at the end of the Fever and Storm game yesterday. With about 15 to 20 seconds left, Caitlin Clark walked over to the Seattle Storm bench. While she's walking over, Seattle Storm player quickens her pace to bump Caitlin. Caitlin just kind of ignores her and pumps up the Indiana Fever crowd behind the bench. Seattle Storm bench, not exactly happy about that. So the Storm's coach crosses the half-court line, which you aren't allowed to do. She should have gotten a technical for it. So she crossed the half-court line, starts talking to Christy Sides. They're exchanging words. Maybe the Storm coach was upset because Christy Sides didn't pull her starters. Maybe she was upset because of what Caitlin Clark said. I don't know. Either way, I took an issue with it. First and foremost, look, if you don't want to deal with the trash talk from Caitlin Clark, if you don't want to deal with the opposing team not pulling their starters when they're up big, then win the game. That is the most simple fix. If you're going to get upset about trash talk or the other team not pulling their starters, then win. This was a lesson I was taught when I was very young. Okay, I have an older brother, 14 months older than me to the day, which is pretty crazy. And, because of that, we competed in everything. We played on, the same little league teams, played on the same middle school football teams, all that kind of stuff. And, because he's my older brother, he was just always 1 year more developed than I was. And so because of that, if we played football in the front yard, yeah, I'll never forget my dad. Gotta be honest, was not a football guy in terms of playing it, especially when I was little. I'll never forget my dad playing on his hands and knees in our front yard in nothing but a plastic Dallas Cowboys helmet, while my brother and I were fully suited up in full-blown pads, and we'd go out in the front yard and we'd play football. And yeah, it was crazy. But I'll never forget, whether it was that or playing basketball in the yard or 21 or playing, NCAA football back on the PlayStation 2, whatever it was, my brother, when I was younger, he oftentimes beat me. He did. You're older than me, just better at me than stuff. And he used to drive me crazy. First of all, the fact that I would lose. And second, the fact that my older brother would just relentlessly run his mouth the entire time. Okay, he's a youth pastor. He likes to talk. I like to talk. Dad's a pastor. It just kind of runs in our family. We just like to talk. And so, he would run his mouth, and I'd get mad, and I'd hit him or whatever. My dad would have to come and just pick me up, throw me over his shoulder, set me down, face all red, looking like a little tomato. And I'd be just so upset. And my dad would be like, Jonathan, like, why are you upset? And I'd be like, because, he beat me. And, he said all these things. And, my dad, being just the guy that he is, looks at me and goes, well, if you don't want to hear that, then win. That is the answer. And so that to me is the answer, Seattle Storm. If you don't want to deal with all this, then just win the game. Okay, seriously, it's not that hard. Just go win the game, and you don't have to deal with it. Okay, but here's the other thing. The Seattle Storm had beaten the Indiana Fever earlier in the year by 15 and by 12. Do you know what the Seattle Storm did not do in those games? Sure, they pulled their starters, with about a minute left to go in each. But you know what they didn't do? They did not take a shot clock violation on their final possession to avoid running up the score like the Indiana Fever did yesterday. Who cares if the starters were on the floor? Come on now. Who cares? I don't. They clearly weren't trying to run up the score. Okay? If they were trying to run up the score, then they would have called another play. They'd have ran another Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark screen and roll, and they would have gotten a layup or an open three. Maybe Lexi Hull would have hit another three. Okay, if they legitimately wanted to run up the score and be a bad sport, and I'm hearing all this stuff about sportsmanship on Twitter, I'm like, you guys don't care about that. Whatever. They just don't like Caitlin Clark. That's really the answer to it. But either way, the Fever were clearly not trying to run up the score. Who cares if the starters were on the floor? Okay, the Storm were just upset that they lost, and they were throwing a temper tantrum like a toddler does. Okay, oh, you didn't take your starters out. Who cares? Win the game if you have that big of an issue with it, and win the game and leave your starters in next time. Who cares? Okay? The Storm were just upset that they lost by 17. The Seattle Storm were just upset that they lost to a team that they had already beaten 3 times this year. And I bet when they showed up at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, they expected to win. I guarantee that was their expectation when they walked into the building. And when it didn't happen, they got upset. Okay? And here's the thing. More butt kickings, they are fully on the way. Okay, the Fever called Amazon last night. They're like, hey, we need a box full of butt kickings, and they're getting here in 2 days. So watch out. Minnesota Lynx is happening. Okay, that's their next game on August 24th. So they got another nice little break here, which will be good for them. They deserve a break. Okay, they played so many games in such a short amount of time. It's nice to see them getting a little bit of rest here more towards the end of the season, right? And that's only going to help Caitlin Clark continue to get better. She is incredible. She's amazing. Okay, whatever adjective you want to insert there for really good at basketball, put it in, okay? Because she's, like I said, she's incredible. And I said this last week, I believe. Said she was going to be better after the Olympic break, right? Get some time off. Apparently she went down to Mexico or something, relaxed a little bit. Okay, first break she's had from basketball in dang near a year. Okay, it's been really good for her, right? Had some time off. She's had opportunities to practice more with her teammates. Okay, like they've been practicing and doing all of those things, which is super great. And so I'm, very much looking forward to seeing how she continues to get better, coming out of this Olympic break. Like she comes out first game against the Phoenix Mercury. She scores 29 points on 50% shooting and 36% shooting from 3. She also had 10 assists and 5 rebounds. And then yesterday, she had 23 points, 9 assists, and 3 rebounds on 47% shooting and 30% shooting from 3. 5 turnovers in each game for the haters out there that want me to mention that. Now, she also now holds the rookie single season record for assists in a game. And after the game, of course, she was asked about it. So here's Caitlin Clark talking about breaking the rookie assist record and leading the WNBA in assists per game.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, if you would have told me I would lead the league in assists coming in here in my rookie season, I probably would have told you you're lying. But I take a lot of pride in that. I want to set my teammates up first and foremost because I think that's going to help you have the most successful team. Whether that's in the pick and roll, that's probably where I'm most successful with that. And I'm lucky enough to play with AB and Liz, and who are really good in that action. And then I think our shooting has gotten a lot better, especially to start these 2 games of the second half. So, I'm always looking for my teammates in transition. That's kind of where I thrive the most. And sometimes I overpass it a little bit. And, there's always going to be the turnover side of it, just with how fast I play the game and, how much the ball is in my hands. But, they'll continue to learn and continue to get better at that. But I still feel like there's a lot of room for me to grow. So that's what I'm most excited about.
That was Caitlin Clark talking about setting the rookie assist record and also leading the WNBA in assists. She is 85 assists away from breaking the single season assist record. She has to average 7 assists a game over the last 12 to break the record. And I think she's going to do it. I mean, really since July, she's been, at around 9 or 10 assists a game. I mean, she's just finding teammates everywhere. Aaliyah Boston's finishing around the bucket. Katie Lou Samuelson and Lexi Hull, they're knocking down threes. And Alyssa Smith is finishing when Caitlin finds her. And Kelsey Mitchell's running the floor and Caitlin's finding her. I mean, it's truly, truly impressive the way that she passes the basketball. Okay, it is still her best skill. It's the thing she does better than anything else. And it continues to be amazing. She continues to be amazing. Okay, the Indiana Fever, they are powered by Caitlin Clark. They've won 5 straight games against teams over 500. Okay, so it's not like she's, putting up these numbers against bad teams. It's not like, she's doing this against the Washington Mystic or the Atlanta Dream or the Dallas Wings. No, she's doing this against the better teams and the better competition in the WNBA, right? And it's going to continue. Cannot wait for August 24th because they go back to Minnesota, right? That's, the coach that said she didn't really care about Caitlin Clark. She's the coach that, didn't want Caitlin Clark on the Olympic team and all those things. So cannot wait for that matchup again because the last time the Fever went up there, they won and it was awesome. Okay, and wouldn't be surprised if we had another altercation like what we had between Christy Sides and the Storm head coach. Wouldn't be surprised if we had that in the next game. And I definitely think we're going to see multiple altercations between the Fever and other teams as these games continue. Because I think it's pretty clear the WNBA, the players, coaches, they don't like Caitlin. I think that's blatantly obvious. Okay? And Caitlin Clark talks a lot of trash, and Caitlin Clark doesn't back down from people. And she's coming, man. She's coming for vengeance. Okay, teams ran it up on the Fever to start the year. In the month of May, the Indiana Fever started the year 1-9. 5 of their first 9 losses were by double digits. 4 of those 5 losses were by 15 points or more. Caitlin Clark and the Fever, they're coming back and they're looking to crush these teams because they ran it up on them to start the year. And now they're about to give it right back to them. And, a major topic of discussion on my show and Dan's show, which comes up here in like 10 minutes, tune in for that. Leary, Kent, Power Hour, all that stuff happening on this beautiful, beautiful Monday. And a major topic of discussion has been what happens to the WNBA? How much do we talk about it after the season ends, right? Or not after the season ends, excuse me, when the NFL season really begins. How much do we talk about it? I actually think we're going to talk about it a fairly decent amount because I think altercations like what happened between the Storm and the Fever are going to continue to happen. And while this is undoubtedly about to turn into a football show, whether that's college football, which starts this weekend, hallelujah, I cannot wait. Week 0, cannot wait for college football. We are days away from game Saturday, August 24th. Week 0, Florida State at Georgia Tech. Can't wait to watch that. SMU at Nevada. Can't wait to watch that. Cannot wait to watch those games. Okay, we're just inching closer and closer and closer. Can't wait for it. But with that being said, we are still going to talk about the WNBA. We're still going to talk about Caitlin Clark. And I say that because Caitlin Clark continues to be the most popular athlete on the planet. Okay, she is. And, sports talk, whatever we talk about, it's a popularity thing. Who is the most popular? And right now, it's Caitlin Clark. And if she continues to dice people up, and if she continues to break records, and if the Fever continue to win games, I just don't see a world in which people just completely stop talking about Caitlin Clark. Now, it may not be the lead story. Okay, but when the lead, she wasn't the lead story today. It was Jim Irsay and all the nonsense that spewed from his mouth about Chris Ballard being a blue chip general manager. But we're going to continue to discuss Caitlin Clark because she is a polarizing figure. People have incredibly strong opinions about her one way or the other. Okay, and something that sells is drama. It really does. And there's a ton of drama. There's a ton of pettiness in the WNBA, and that's not going anywhere. That's not going anywhere. That's something that we're going to continue to see as the year progresses on. Okay, I'm telling you, we're going to get more altercations like this. Okay, maybe it's going to be, Clark and another player at some point as opposed to Christy Sides and the Storm head coach. But look, this Fever team, they seem really nice, but I think they're pretty competitive. Caitlin Clark is clearly highly competitive. And look, they remember when the Liberty and the Aces and the Storm and all these teams early in the year just ran up the score on them. I promise they haven't forgotten it. And Caitlin Clark hasn't forgotten about all the crap that's been said about her by opposing coaches and opposing players. She hasn't forgotten it. I can guarantee you. And so whenever she goes to Minnesota, like she does in their next game here in 5 days, when she goes to Minnesota to take on the Lynx, she's going to be revved up and ready to go. That game's going to be intense, right? Because it's the Olympic coach and, all the crap she said. That game's going to be intense when they go and they play the Liberty again. That game is going to be intense, right? Because something that's not changing in a world that changes constantly is the disdain that all of these women have for Caitlin Clark. It's not going anywhere. Okay, and something else that isn't going anywhere is the competitiveness that Caitlin Clark has. And I think when those two things collide, we're going to get some awesome stories. So when football season comes around, will Caitlin Clark be the lead? Probably not. But make no mistake about it, people are going to continue to talk about her just because of how polarizing she is as an athlete. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Good show today. I felt like it went well. The Dan Dockett Show coming up next from noon to 3. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube page so you can join the live stream tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith. We live stream the show there as well. Thanks again for listening. I will talk to you tomorrow from 10 to noon. Coming next here in about 5 minutes is the Dan Dockett Show.